Hey guys, this is Andrew Little from East Coast Halifax, right now on the West Coast, attending WWDC. So I thought I'd take a few minutes and go through some of the content, some of the things I've heard from the conference, starting with Keynote. If you've already watched Keynote, then a lot of this stuff I'm going to say is redundant and you won't get a lot out of it, so feel free to bounce at any time. First thing they noted was to talk a little bit about iPad and some of the stats there. So some of the things of note: 2 million units sold to date. They're live in 10 countries, 19 additional by the end of July. There's 8,500 apps in the App Store at the moment. It's just the iPad App Store, and lots of publishers coming online. So a lot of those news apps are coming live, which is kind of interesting. They also noted that 22% of the ebooks sold are through iBooks. Next up, they talked about the App Store. So here they talked about there being two separate platforms, HTML5, where you can deploy anything you want, no restrictions, and then of course the App Store, which they call a curated selection of applications. They're getting 15,000 apps per week submitted to the App Store, which I thought was kind of neat. Those are both updated and new apps across 30 different languages. They talked about 3 top reasons for rejection. So one was an app doesn't function as it was described. They also reject if you use private APIs, which is pretty easy to avoid, and also reject apps that crash. So those things are definitely under control, and they're just calling it out. Also called out that eBay did $600 million in volume in the last year, and they're looking at 1.5 to 2 billion in this coming year. Then they went through some app demos, which were, marginally interesting. Then, of course, they switched over and talked about iPhone. So we've got smartphone market share, RIM at 35% at the moment, iPhone with 22%, Win Mobile with 19%, and Android going up with 9%. Browser usage that once again showed that iPhone was dominating, but Android closer on its heels, 58% market share for browser usage for the iPhone, and 22.7% for Android. So that was pretty interesting as well. Finally, of course, they talked about iPhone 4, which everybody was excited to hear about, although a lot of this has already been leaked, so there weren't a lot of great surprises. They talked about 8 features, so I'll go through them quickly. All new design, so it's super thin, stainless steel, glass on front and back, integrated antennas in the casing, which was kind of interesting. Number 2, they talked about Retina display. So this is the 960 by 640 display. It gives you 78% of the pixels that you'll get on an iPad in the size of an iPhone, so that was pretty amazing. I can only imagine what they'll be able to do on the iPad with a similar display. Apps look better, so it's going to auto-render your text and your controls for you. You don't have to do anything as a developer. You are, however, going to you're going to be able to, and probably recommended to, scale any of your custom artwork to be 2 times resolution, so that you get the crispness that the display offers. Number 3, we've got the A4 chip inside, which is the same chip that's used in the iPad. It was developed in-house. Thought that was kind of interesting. They give you 40% more talk time. I think there's an increased battery inside, and probably enhance the battery technology as well. Number 4, gyroscope is on board, which was a surprise to me. 3-axis gyroscope, which gives you 6-axis motion sensing if you add in all the other radios that they've got on there. And then they've got new core motion APIs to support that. I haven't seen those yet, but I can only imagine they give you a lot of power as a developer. We talked about the camera, so we've got 5 megapixel, but they talked a little bit about, megapixels not being the only thing that matters to a camera. This camera is really designed for low light shooting, so you should get high quality photos, despite megapixels not being quite as high as obviously other commercial cameras in the market. It shoots HD video in 720p, which was pretty an amazing feat, or I was surprised by it, let's just say that. Tap to focus in the video. It's got onboard video editing, and then they did a demo of iMovie for the iPhone, which was awesome. It's going to be sold for $4.99, so it's not a free app, but the power bond, it was pretty impressive. So definitely look to incorporate those types of features into your own apps as well. And you've got LED flash on the camera, and you can also use that when shooting video as well. Number 6, iPhone OS 4, which a lot has already been talked about in that, so I won't go into that. Although they did release the Goldmaster release of that, so developers can start really fine-tuning those apps for release with the OS upgrade. They showed some upgrade to iBooks, marginally interesting, not that great. Then they talked about iAds, which I thought was kind of interesting. iAds are, a lot different from what you'll see with AdMob and other ad platforms on the iPhone to date. Basically, the idea behind iAds is that you integrate them just as you would these other ad platforms. But the way Apple sells them is much different. They actually sell to much larger enterprises and big fixed advertising contracts, rather than sort of those micro-payment ad mod sort of approaches. So it's much different. They'll give developers 60% of the revenue, and then Apple actually handles hosting and selling the ads. You get paid through iTunes Connect just as you do when you sell your applications. And they've only been selling ads for 8 weeks, but they were happy to point out that they've sold $60 million worth of advertising to date. So I wouldn't say it's a huge number. Developers will get at most 60% of that, and then of that, how much will your app actually generate in terms of revenue? It's still hard to say. But they did show an excellent Nissan ad that was written in HTML5 and had all the animations that you could expect in an Apple ad. And I guess rest assured that if Apple's doing the selling and the designing of the ads, or at least curating the ads, that you're going to be hosting amazing looking ads within your application, which is pretty cool. Finally, they actually added a ninth feature to talk about, which was FaceTime, which you might have guessed by the front-facing camera that's on the phone. FaceTime actually allows you to do video calls between iPhones. You need Wi-Fi for this to work, at least for now. I think 3G might be available at some point, but pointed to the carriers as the reason that wasn't supported to date. There's no setup. You can use the front or rear-facing camera, which was kind of a neat option, being able to toggle between the two, and you can use it in the landscape as well. So, they pointed out shipping tens of millions of devices, so finding people to talk to with these voice calls shouldn't be an issue. The main point, I think, to call out with this FaceTime is that they're actually going to the standards, going to release this story as an open industry standard. So look for this beyond just the iPhone. If they can get a standard across all phones, I think that's a much more compelling feature. They talked a little bit about pricing, but as Canadians, that won't be very interesting until we see Rogers or the other carriers announce pricing. So we'll wait and see. And that's a wrap on the keynote from the first day. Obviously, you can watch the whole keynote in full video on the web, but there's a quick snapshot of the things I saw and the things that I found interesting. Thanks for listening, and I'll try and post recaps from other sessions as the week progresses. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.